The Pro Football Hall of Fame for 2025, the initial list of nominees came out, and every year I'm put in that category. It seems like the last few years, for some rhyme or reason. Thankfully, because hopefully I did something well. But it's always interesting because you never know exactly how they come to the conclusion of who's deserving, and then ultimately who gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, I can't go across all categories because I think it's you have to break each category down, but I'm going to deal with the one that I know best, and that's the receiver category. And initially when I look at it, there are some players that just jump out that I know of that I've watched, I've enjoyed watching, whether they're your favorites or not, they're guys that I like watching and I think are deserving. And I don't put it in any order. It doesn't matter if I know them personally or whether or not I think they are players that um, in my opinion, should or shouldn't be on there. But the ones that jump out are like Torrey Holt. Here's a guy that's been consistent, player I like watching, big impact player, plays with Isaac Bruce. I had the opportunity to watch him play and the whole nine, the greatest show on turf with Marshall Falk and Kurt Warner and all these guys. Great player. Reggie Wayne, he's another guy I watched. And I watched him because I watched Marvin Harrison. And because Tom Moore, who was my offensive coordinator, went over, I saw what he did not only with our team, but what he also was able to do with Indy. With the Colts, and then he went to Tampa Bay. He had the same success. He went to Arizona, played with with Coach Larry Fitzgerald, and also Anquan Bolden. And I saw the same system being replicated and the same results in terms of having these dynamic dual receivers like he had with myself and Brett Perriman. And again, just watching a lot of them, these names just pop up. Brandon Marshall, another guy, big player. Damaris Thomas, another big player. Musa Muhammad, friend, but also a person that is another big body wide receiver. Then you got your guys like Andre Rison, you got Chad Johnson, you got Steve Smith. These are those guys that were very charismatic. They were characters. They had antics, and they were very animated players. And then you got others. They just go out and they just get it in. Wells Walker, Anquan Bolden, um, Heinz Ward, Super Bowl champion. So it's this list of all these players, and you're trying to figure out, well, who's most deserving. And I said, you know what? Let me peel it back just a little bit. I just want to peel it back a little bit. So when I look at this, I say I'm just curious, and I have to admit there was a little bit of a self promoting piece that was in there because I want to see where did I really rank when you kind of peel it back, because I don't have some of the numbers, the overall longevity numbers that some of these players have. And some others don't have it either, but they have impact. So when you think about what makes for a Hall of Fame caliber receiver during their time in their era, I think it's a deeper conversation. There's a deeper meaning behind it. And I think you have to really put in time and attention to see who's deserving. So this is what I came up with. So I said, okay, let's see if we break it down by total number of Pro Bowls and All Pros combined, first team, All Pros, and also number of Pro Bowls. Interesting list. You got Torrey Holt, 7 Pro Bowls. He's got 8 total, so he's got 7 Pro Bowls, one All first team All Pro. And you got myself at 4 Pro Bowls, 3 first team All Pros. Then you got Chad Johnson, 6 Pro Bowls, one first team All Pro. Reggie Wayne, 6 Pro Bowls, one first team All Pro. And then you got Brandon Marshall at 6 Pro Bowls and one first team All Pro. So we got a total of 8 with Torrey Holt, and then the rest of us had 7 combined. That's an interesting list. Okay. That's okay. Well, how many of these guys have really held NFL titles, meaning the receptions for yards or in receiving in the yards? So then you got Wells Walker. He has 3 reception titles and 2 receiving yards titles. So he's got a total of 5. Then after that, you had myself with 2 reception titles, 1 receiving yards title. Then Brandon Marshall, same thing, 2 receiving titles for receptions, 1 for receiving yards. And then after that, you have Torrey Holt, 1 receptions title, 2 receiving yards title. Chad Johnson, 1 receptions title and 2 receiving yards title. And then after that, it goes to a series of guys who have 1, which starts with like Steve Smith. Then I said, okay, well, let's look at size because we talk about how in this day and age, whether it's guys who have speed or whether they come in and they have size and they're imposing and because of their physique and just these different things that they bring that make them hard to defend. So I said, let's go with height. Why? Because I'm a tall guy. And at the time, we were considered what they call tweeners. So you're between a wide receiver and a tight end. They didn't know really what to do with you. Came in and it was always about the run and shoot size guys. They were 6'1" or shorter type guys. And your 6', 6'1" guy was considered your big guy. So then all of a sudden you come in and you bring in guys like myself at 6'4", 223 pounds, Brandon Marshall, 6'5", 232 pounds, Demarius Thomas, 6'3", 225 pounds. And then you got Musa Muhammad, 6'2", 215 pounds. And then after that, you got 6'1" and shorter in that list of this year's Hall of Fame guys. So I go, okay, there was some conversation to be had in terms of how you change the game, how the game gets played, how people have to defend, how they have to draft, because you no longer could cover us with these smaller guys. And we really changed the way defenses had to play us. Then, you can never get away from guys who are Super Bowl guys, right? In this list, you got some guys that's the big holy grail. How many of you went to a Super Bowl? Well, it's more than just going to a Super Bowl. How many of you impacted the ability for your team to be Super Bowl contenders and or go off the Super Bowl? So you can't discount that. So I don't. And when you start there, guy that you're going to think about is Hines Ward. This is a tough player, tough guy. No one's ever going to talk about, he was the one that probably changed, he and Chris Carter and some of the guys I saw changed that crack back block. Like Hines Ward would go in and blow up a safety. He would go in and blow up a guy on a crack back block. And I remember watching him do that endless and countless times. So you got Hines Ward, 2 Super Bowls. You got Rod Smith, 2 Super Bowls. Demarius Thomas, 1. And then after that, you get a series of guys who got 1. So you got Reggie Wayne, Jordy Nelson, Andre Rison, Antonio Freeman, Donald Driver, Anquan Bolden. So now you have that list. Then we get into the factor of what do you have to work with? This is where it gets really, really interesting, because on this entire list, something I uncovered was every single one of these guys played with either a Super Bowl MVP, All Pro quarterback, Pro Bowl quarterback, MVP quarterback, or somewhere along that line, except one. Take a guess who that was. I think I should have had a Hall of Fame, a Pro Bowl quarterback in Scott Mitchell. I think he got snubbed one year. But it was interesting. Of the starting quarterbacks, I'm going to read something to you that was kind of interesting. Here are the quarterbacks of all those players on the list. Reggie Wayne. It's got Peyton Manning. So you got Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. He also played with Andrew Luck. Jordy Nelson. He played with Aaron Rodgers, Super Bowl MVP, All Pro, Pro Bowl quarterback. He played briefly with Brett Favre, Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Wes Welker played with Tom Brady, Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Peyton Manning, Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Hines Ward, Ben Roethlisberger, Pro Bowl, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Even played with Tommy Maddox, Pro Bowler. Demarius Thomas played with Peyton Manning, Pro Bowl, MVP, Super Bowl MVP, so on and so forth. Even Tim Tebow, briefly, even though he was a Heisman Trophy, really no big NFL accolades. Rod Smith, John Elway, Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Torrey Holt, Kurt Warner, Pro Bowl, All Pro, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Even Mark Bulger, Pro Bowler. Antonio Freeman, Brett Favre, already said what he did. Donald Driver, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Andre Rison, Brett Favre, also played with Irvis Gerbach, Pro Bowler. Musa Muhammad, Jake Delhomme, Pro Bowler. Steve Berline, Pro Bowler. Steve Smith, Cam Newton, Pro Bowler, MVP, NFL MVP, All Pro. Jake Delhomme, Pro Bowl. Brandon Marshall, played with Jay Cutler, Pro Bowler. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Pro Bowler. And briefly, Russell Wilson, Pro Bowler, Super Bowl MVP. Joe Horn, Drew Brees, Pro Bowler, MVP, Super Bowl. You kind of get it. Chad Johnson, Carson Palmer, Pro Bowler. Jimmy Smith, Mark Brunell, Pro Bowler. Anquan Bolden, Joe Flacco, Super Bowl MVP. Kurt Warner, Pro Bowler, Super Bowl MVP, All Pro. Derek Mason, Steve McNair, Pro Bowl, All Pro. Irvin Fryer, Dan Marino, Pro Bowler, All Pro, and briefly with Drew Bledsoe. Herman Moore, Scott Mitchell. He's not a slouch. Scott Mitchell should have been a Pro Bowler, but I have no quarterback as a Pro Bowler. Interesting. And I only bring that up because what is the criteria for Pro Football Hall of Fame? And when I look at it, it's all based on a subjective list. It's based on the criteria. It's based on how you put it all together. And there's a case to be made for quite a few of these guys that are in here. But there are some that I think are definitely deserving of going, regardless of any of those things I just mentioned. As I said before, I think Reggie Wayne, I think Torrey Holt, I think Steve Smith Jr., Senior. I think you look at Heinz Ward, a guy who's definitely put in his stripes and has waited his time. But that does not remove guys like Jimmy Smith, Andre Rison, um, uh, Rod Smith, as I mentioned before. These are guys that I think also deserve to get in there, as well as yours truly. So as you look at the list, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear what you think about what I just broke down because I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know how you put this all together, but either way, I say congratulations to all the guys that are going in this year, all those that were nominated. Congratulations on that because it is a great honor, nonetheless. But I thought I'd share that with you. Something very interesting. So I don't sit back and just look at this and take it lightly. I'm very appreciative of it. I do it greatly. I thank the Detroit Lion fan base for supporting me throughout my career because that's why we do what we do. So keep chiming in because you're going to get more of that from Herman's head. See you later.